All right, and welcome to Assets and Algorithms, the show where we explore the intersection of real estate and technology. I have my guest here today is Aguirre.
Aguirre.
Gary, excuse me, my apologies.
No problem. It's a tough one.
So you're the leader over at Capital Rivers Commercial, and thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to jump in and hear about some of the great things that you guys are doing over there at Capital Rivers. So you've built it into a trusted name in real estate. Could you walk us through your role as CEO and how that connects with the broader mission of guiding national brands through site selection, development, and management?
Sure. I'll first kind of give you a little background to kind of set the tone. So, I actually started on the corporate side before I started Capital Rivers and did some tenant rep for CVS Pharmacy. So, I helped them expand in California when I worked at a company called Armstrong Development. And then I was at JP Morgan Chase, Chase Bank, right around kind of the financial crisis. And they acquired Washington Mutual from the FDIC. So, I was on the development team doing site selection, converting a lot of those WAMUs to Chase Banks, opening new Chase Banks. So, on the tenant rep side. And then I ran the real estate department for a company called Sleep Train, which also owned Sleep Country and Mattress Discounters. And they were the largest mattress retailer on the West Coast. They had about 150 locations. So I did site selection, development, facilities, kind of everything real estate related renewals. They ultimately sold to Mattress Firm, the publicly traded company. And at that point, I quit and started Capital Rivers and started as a development company, getting sweat equity for putting deals together. I had a friend whose father was a developer and he would put up the equity. And then, I would find the site, get the entitlements, permits, tie up the tenants, all of that. And then, we'd sell it, make a little bit of money, kind of roll it into the next deal. So that's kind of how I got started. So my background really was on the tenant rep side and then, transitioned over to the development side. So I've kind of seen both sides, which I think is a little bit of a unique kind of position. So when we work with tenants, whether it's on the brokerage side or the development side, we really try to understand their needs. So who are your clients? What drives your business? What's important to your business? What are your margins? Are there good co-synergies? I think that's really important is like, first of all, you've got to understand what makes X brand successful and then
Mhm.
match that with the right real estate. So that's what we try to do for our clients, and that comes from just my experience being on kind of both sides.
Absolutely. Having that extensive experience, like you mentioned, on both sides, I'm pretty sure is really powerful and pushing the mission forward for what you guys do at Capital Rivers. You mentioned a lot about, finding out what drives that brand, who those customers are, and taking in some of the other variables when choosing a site. I'd love to hear about what does the typical day look like for you? And are you leveraging technology to help you manage all of those different variables and drive those decisions based on that data when you're making those decisions?
Yeah, so it's changed a lot. When I first started the company, I did everything, literally everything, like paying invoices to creating marketing brochures to kind of everything. And so now 10 years later, it's evolved, and we've got a staff that does a lot of different things, transaction coordinator, we've got a marketing department, things like that. Day is different. Every day is completely different, whether it's working with some of the brokers that might have questions and helping them grow their business and work through challenges that they might have on a deal or help strategize on selecting sites for, their clients, to working with our property management division to figuring out how we can be more efficient and, solving clients' challenges. So on the development side, trying to identify sites and, work with some of our clients on that end. And, technology certainly plays a big role. We talked about this earlier before the podcast, started, and, commercial real estate for whatever reason has always been kind of old school. And you look at residential real estate and they've got all these different tools and tech platforms, and they're doing a lot of social media, and they're doing all kinds of cool stuff. And commercial real
Mhm.
estate, it's like up to a couple of years ago they were still faxing stuff to each other. And so it's certainly changing. I think that there's some younger kind of generations getting into the business. The older generations are somewhat adopting new technologies, but still kind of trying to do business the way that it's always been done. And so, here we're always looking for new tools that can you know, help our team, whether it's, whatever division it is, right? Or, provide a better product, better service, and do it more efficiently. So we've got a number of different tools that we utilize. The challenge has just been that they don't all necessarily talk to each other or work together. I think that's kind of the not just a challenge in our industry, but other industries as well. But particularly in ours, with a lot of new different companies developing things. So yeah, we're kind of navigating that.
Okay, that sounds great. I think, yeah, like you mentioned, commercial real estate is definitely lagged when it comes to adopting technology. And I think that is one of the major shifts that we're seeing and will continue to see uh as AI continues to make things easier to do. Hopefully it'll fill in those gaps to where this tool can talk to that tool and
It's already starting to do a lot of that.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And it sounds like you guys have embraced innovation. I know you guys do a lot of GIS mapping and use tools for your in-house projects and your management platform. How has technology played a role in enhancing your team's execution and client delivery?
Yeah, I mean, without technology, I don't think we'd be in business. It's absolutely necessary. We've got our CRM. We've got we use a program called Build Out for kind of our back end management of the brokerage, transaction process and commissions and
Mhm.
splits and all of that. And we've got Yardi and we've got QuickBooks and we've got CoStar and we've got Placed Your AI and we've got Buxton Scout, and I'm sure I'm missing a dozen other different technologies that we use. Obviously, things like ChatGPT, the Google Suites. At one point we even built our own app. And we still have that app. It's just kind of I shelved it for a minute to focus on some other things. But technology is it's also one of our biggest expenses.
Mm.
Because you need it. And oftentimes you have to get different programs that might have some overlapping features, but one doesn't have the same features as the other. And they don't
Mm.
always talk to each other. You can't get the APIs to connect or bridge them with, one of the programs. So yeah, it's critical to what we do. It's absolutely essential to our growth in the future. The problem or challenge is probably a better word, is how do you get the right technologies to work together to yield the results that you want? I think everyone's going to some extent trying to figure that out.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And what's frustrating people right now is they have, like you said, a lot of those technologies are overlapping, but getting them to get exactly the result that you want. And I think that's where it's supporting us and where humans are still bridging that gap
Yeah.
and making that.
Based solely on like ChatGPT, because if you plug
Mhm.
something in, it's not necessarily going to give you the right answer or the answer that you need. And so you've got to that's where like these, specialists in prompting, that are now making pretty decent money, they are good at asking the right questions and putting in the right prompts and, in order to
Mhm.
get the results that they're looking for. But yeah.
Absolutely. So let me ask, because you are known for being a data-driven firm, which metrics or signals would you say that you track most closely when evaluating new market opportunities or overall company performance?
Yeah, it kind of depends. So, like, if we're working with like a client like QuickQuack, they're
Mhm.
looking for different, data than, client like Caliber Collision or, Tesla or something like that. So it's kind of specific. If it's, a car wash, they want high traffic, because obviously they want a lot of cars and visibility. Income levels can vary a little bit, but they've got to be able to support paying for the subscription, because it's a membership based program. And, typically they like to be near other, kind of daily driver type retailers, grocery stores, Costco, obviously, that sort of thing. And then access is pretty important as well.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're looking at like a QSR, they need the high traffic. but then access becomes even more important because it's a impulse purchase typically, versus a destination. So you've got to be able to get people in and out, mostly in, a lot
Mm-hmm.
easier. So it really kind of just depends. And then, we'll use tools like Placer AI, which will track, look at cell phone data to help kind of figure out where some of the customers are coming from or where they went to before or after. But again, it's, you can't rely solely on that. It's just it's a tool that kind of helps, tell the picture. And then Buxton Scout has kind of a similar mobile analytics program. And so you kind of look at that to get a sense of where the customers may be coming from or going to figure out the best location. So it's a variety of different sources that we'll kind of pull from and look at in order to at least from the site selection standpoint, and then kind of build the model and go, okay, hey, based on retailer X or client X, this is your kind of profile of your customer. This is the best location. So let's go now find the best real estate within that area that meets that criteria.
Nice. I love that you have so many tools that you have in your tool belt to pull out and service your clients' needs across a variety of different types of clients and different needs that they have. That's awesome.
Yeah, like it could
Again,
be healthcare, like senior, like we built a WellBe Health, and so they're kind of higher at risk, lower income seniors.
mhm,
So that's a different demographic. How
right.
many Medicare Medi-Cal patients are in the area? What's the demographic in terms of age and income? So everyone's got their own story, based on their business model, and then you try to fit that, and find the real estate that matches that.
Really, really exciting stuff. I think as commercial real estate continues to evolve, it'll be the processes stay the same, the relationships will stay the same, but the ways that we are able to increase those metrics on and increase that bottom line at the end of the day will be impacted by these tools. So
Yeah,
I
I think AI is going to be a big game changer. It already is, but it's going to continue to be.
Exactly. So that's what I wanted to ask. Where do you see, let's say, the next 6 to 12 months, AI changing the industry as a whole, or even your company? Any specific things you're looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I could just tell you how we kind of use it now is like as a powerful admin, and
Mhm.
researcher. I mean, it's amazing what it can produce. I've used it to, review financials and give me an analysis that otherwise, I'd have to send to, our accountant and our tax person, and it would take them a couple of days and it would cost a couple $100, and like, it spits it out, right? Or like, research on, especially now with like, it's getting a lot better, like deep research,
Mhm.
we were looking at a project in Nevada and it's like, plug in the information. They do a deep research on any, articles or, public filings or anything on it. And, it takes it about 4 or 5 minutes or whatever, maybe longer. And,
Mhm.
it gives you a ton of information that otherwise would take you hours and hours to go get. Broker's opinion of value. You still got to do the research and like get the comps and stuff like that. But you can create a template, a custom GPT, and it'll spit out your broker opinion of value. You put it on, your logo on it, and it's better than what you would create, in much shorter amount of time. Obviously, you still have to review it. You still, you gotta make sure that it's good. Helping with and it's like endless SEO, right?
Yeah.
Optimization.
Yeah.
Like it knows the Google algorithms better than anybody else. So like,
Mhm.
whereas you used to, have to hire somebody that was an SEO expert or have a program, that would help you, write your articles and put in the tags and everything that you needed to optimize it. Now
Mhm.
you can use Gemini or ChatGPT or one of the large language models, and it'll just optimize it for you. Um, so use it for that. You might have a 100-page geotechnical report. Usually I just go to the summary and read that, but like you can upload it and it'll do a much more thorough analysis. I mean, it's like endless, the
Mhm.
amount of things that it can do. It's just how do you implement it into your daily routine, and then how do you get these programs to talk to each other? And maybe that's through a large language model. I mean, one of my favorite things to do with it too is record a meeting and have it summarize my notes, which is like a super simple thing to do, but now you've got basically a note taker, it's amazing. I mean, it can do financial models too. Like you could upload a financial model on an investment property and, ask it some questions. And, again, you got to have the human aspect to like interpret it and to make sure that it's
Hmm.
correct. So sometimes it'll hallucinate or get things wrong or whatever. But it's a huge time saver. I think that
Absolutely.
a junior broker that maybe doesn't have the knowledge and experience of a senior broker, but can utilize the new technologies, um, can grow faster and outpace a senior broker in today's day and age because they can
Mhm.
produce results so much faster and the quality is so much better. It's kind of revolutionary times, I think. And I think you have to embrace artificial intelligence, otherwise you're gonna, you'll be out of business.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think everybody has to embrace it. And I think that's a great point that you made that, someone who doesn't necessarily have the experience of a senior in any position can use this technology to close that gap and give them even a bit of an edge when it comes to productivity and, just getting things done in general. So
And it's still a
it is
relationship
exciting.
business at the end of the day.
Right,
So you still have to
right,
have the
right.
relationships and you still gotta have the knowledge to be able to talk about intelligently or whatever it is that you're communicating with your clients. You can't just like regurgitate what, ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever one of these other programs, spits out.
Hmm.
But it's such a huge tool to use. And I mean, even going back to when I started in the business, we would take out maps and like you place sticky, dots on sites, and like it was just so old school. That like
Hmm.
I'd carry around like I got a AAA membership, so I could carry the maps around and like get free maps, and like nobody has a map anymore. Like I mean, it's just and everything is just so quick,
Yeah.
or if you've got like an Excel, formula question, like, you used to spend hours trying to solve it. Now it's like it solves it for you in like a minute. But again, it's still a relationship business. I think, it's computers aren't going to take over commercial
No.
real estate because you still need that relationship aspect. You need to be able to interpret it, and a lot of it's a mix between kind of art and science.
Hmm.
You still got to know what you're doing, but you can certainly get better quicker.
Absolutely. I don't think that the relationship portion of the business will ever, stop, will ever not be needed or ever be removed. AI can just enhance what a human is able to do and push them forward closer to their goal. So it's an interesting time, like you said. I'll be excited to see what it continues to do. I mean, it's only been three
Yeah.
years, right?
I mean, just like in the last few weeks, like we've been playing around with it could be kind of an old building that you're going to retrofit, and you give it some prompts and say, hey, change it to these colors, add this feature, and it's gotten really good at creating some pretty cool renderings that otherwise you'd have to go hire an architect that would cost you, several $1,000s to put these renderings together. And you can literally get it in like 10 minutes, by just
Hmm.
prompting it. And it's great.
Hmm.
You can get floor plans now. There's programs on your phone where you can, geofence an area. You just scan it and record it, and you've got a very accurate floor plan.
Hmm.
I mean, those types of tools are so valuable.
Yeah, I mean it's essentially relieving a ton of bottlenecks that we have in our processes and in our businesses that we, maybe didn't pay a ton of attention to, but being able to delegate those manual tasks to AI is a game changer, right?
For
For
sure.
anyone that can use it properly.
We just need
If you
local governments to adopt it so they can process permits and entitlements faster. Because that's like, talking with colleagues and stuff in the industry, and we just got back from a conference in Monterey, and like the biggest thing is cities and counties taking forever to process permits, entitlements, not being able to give you accurate estimates. Like if
Yeah.
commercial real estate is behind the times, government agencies, specifically city, county, kind of local agencies, typically are even
Hmm.
further behind the times.
Right.
Hopefully they'll start to adopt some technologies that'll help them process things quicker.
That's a really, really great point. I think that's a great point because city and county governments, they don't necessarily have the budget to get these systems that can give them the productivity that they need and to get them to go through that information at a quick enough pace to make those decisions. But with AI, like you mentioned, for a host of other cases, it can go through that information and spit out an answer for them in minutes, right?
I mean, if there was a city that was like really wanting to be forward thinking, they would figure out how do I get some program or programs to do some plan checks, to run
Hmm.
fee estimates, do these things that are just, manually being done and
Hmm.
taking forever and is a huge
Yeah.
bottleneck because we can get as efficient as we want on the
Hmm.
private sector side. But if it gets stuck in the bottleneck, and it takes, a year to get in, permits, that's
Hmm.
still a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
it's kind of everyone's got to get on board. Otherwise, you still get stuck.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, to all cities or counties that are listening, please figure out ways to adopt technology to make your lives easier, reduce your costs, and get deals through the pipeline quicker so you can start collecting tax revenue quicker.
That's a great point, man. I love that. I appreciate all the insights that you provided today. I'd like to take this time to let you give your contact information if anybody wants to reach out to you. Any last words, any last sentiments that you like to let people know about?
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And, I'm a big believer in helping each other out in this business and in life and sharing information. And, you never know who you're going to meet, what it's going to lead to. And, that's kind of how I've built the business at this point, how we're going to continue to grow. And so it was a pleasure doing this and look forward to staying in touch. And anyone that wants to reach out, you can call me. Phone number is 916-514-5225, or you can email me, which is even better, which is Greg, Greg, at Capital Rivers, CapitalRivers.com. You can go to our website, which is www.capitalrivers.com, and get more information. And yeah, look forward to staying in touch.
Sounds great. Thank you again, Greg, for joining. And this has been another episode of Assets and Algorithms.
Awesome, man. Well, that was fun.